So there are actually quite a number of practitioners, not just mental health practitioners, that are tapping into the science of implicit memory. They just don't know it because they're using non-talk modalities in order to make changes in the nervous system. They're just not branding it that way. In the back of my book is a whole chart of different types of non-talk interventions that can affect the same type of change if you use it in a directed way.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Small Business Mentor podcast, where we shine a light on the black holes of business growth with your host, Alan Pence. In each episode, we explore the leaps and bounds entrepreneurs make as they push their businesses beyond the 1 million mark into the realm of professional sustainable growth. Stay with us as we navigate the journey from brute force to finesse.
All right, today on the pod, we have a very special guest, Ms. Julie Lopez, CEO and founder of Viva Partnership. A little bit different for us today, talking about a therapy practice. So Julie, welcome to the pod.
Thanks so much, Alan. It's great to be here.
Just give us a quick overview of what Viva is, how big it is, what you do.
Yeah, so Viva Partnership started about 14 years ago. I'll be honest, I do have an engineering background, and then I went on to get my master's and my PhD in a clinical track. So not your typical therapist background, but when I got into expanding my practice, I didn't even really think of it as a business. I was doing my own thing, and I started bringing on associates, which is what a lot of clinicians do when they're expanding or building a bigger practice. And it grew over time, kind of in spite of myself. And I think I started treating it more as a business and realizing that I needed more education in business because I took exactly 0 courses in business. Actually, I take that back. In undergrad, I took business for engineers, and it was definitely had a 0 elements of entrepreneurship in it. So almost no academic business background. And when it got pretty big for a clinical practice, we had about 25 clinicians, and it was actually an insanity. I had bootstrapped the business. Things were kind of out of control. I didn't have any systems or structures to it. A lot of my colleagues who go into creating a bigger practice or a bigger business also have no business background. So the classic model is just a default kind of easier model, which is 1099 workers, not a lot of understanding of business systems, almost no background usually in sales or accounting or any of that type of stuff. And I got to a point where the business was at about $1 million, but I wasn't really paying myself. And you might ask, like, how could I actually handle this? Well, I've been investing in real estate for about 25 years and have 20 rentals. So I didn't actually need the revenue personally to pay for 4 children or a house or my living expenses or my travel or all the things I like to do. So I was in a unique situation, but it was 100% not a healthy business at all. And it wasn't until I started investing in my own business education that I put together a scalable model that was actually healthy and was able to have it grow and produce. And really, honestly, a lot of my friends who have group practices have really struggled throughout the years with different things. And they usually come to me, and my model's just so different than most people that get into this space. I'm happy to talk more about it. I'm also happy to talk about this crazy recruiting journey that I went on and some crazy stories about hiring people. But I do want to give one other little shout out with regards to your new podcast, which I love, Small Business Mentor. Love that because it was a big part of my growing and stepping into a true business perspective on what I was doing. But I also happen to be the first female on your podcast.
So let's baseline here. So you're about $1 million in revenue.
Back then.
But you've got like 23 people running around as 1099s kind of thing?
Yeah.
So you're just like a big scheduling service.
Well, what we really were at the time was a physical space. So I was holding the risk of the cost of setting up a space. A lot of people who have great clinical skills were not going to hang their own shingle because it was too scary to rent a space, furnish it, put together the billing structure, all that stuff. Maybe get referrals, maybe not. So a lot of low risk tolerance. That's really what we were, a referral service, like a one-stop shop for clinicians where they could just do the clinical work.
So it strikes me as a profession where like you can, obviously you can be a practitioner, do your own work. I mean, I did that as a government consultant for a long time. Made a lot of money doing that actually because there was no overhead. But as soon as I started putting in overhead, it's pretty difficult to attract those other people to work under your umbrella. But you're saying there's a certain amount of risk aversion in the profession.
This was back in the day. Now, keep in mind, since we've been around for 14 years, I started this pre-pandemic. Now there's a very low barrier to entry because people can literally hang a shingle without even having a space or a sofa or anything, right? They can just do it all virtually. And truth be told, if you're strategic about it, you don't even really need a website or anything. There's almost no cost. And there's software that puts together all the pieces that you need for practice management, billing, invoicing, all that stuff.
And I guess you can go to like a BetterHelp to get referrals.
We can, but that's a whole other nightmare. I mean, Alan, we would need like 20 hours to talk about it. But BetterHelp and things like that, first of all, I'll say this to your whole readership. If you're ever interested in therapy, most talented clinicians would not work for BetterHelp because they pay almost nothing. They're leveraging your insurance, which is great, except for insurance also sucks because they lowball their therapists too. Most of the in-panel therapists are not your top talent. They are getting pennies on the dollar for what their services that they're providing. So yeah, I wouldn't be looking to BetterHelp for referrals. People come to us because they're like, I did BetterHelp and it was really not better.
So the question is like, what's the issue in the profession? Is it like get people getting customers? Why would they work under somebody else's shingle at this point?
Well, I'll tell you why people come to us. So one of the things that people are really having, so it's a cycle, right? And I always say that having a therapy business is kind of recession proof because if you're in a recession, everyone needs therapy. And if you're out of a recession, everyone can afford therapy. And they're like, oh, I'm going to get that. They're climbing that Maslow's hierarchy to enlightenment and they want to, invest in their well-being. But what's happening now is, and I'm happy to talk about the model that works for me. I just think most people who might be interested in starting a therapy business aren't going to set it up the way that I do. And this is a competitive advantage for me. So one pain point in the cycle is not enough referrals, right? The other for someone coming in to work under someone's umbrella. And the other one for practices that are larger is hiring people like you're asking about, right? Why would someone come to work for a practice when they can pretty much do it themselves? One of our core values is learning through connection. We have a community. People feel it right away. We actually just signed someone last week who is being heavily pursued by multiple practices. She's talented. She's good. You can tell. And she picked us. And she picked us because we have a strong culture. We have training that's built in. You're not operating solo. Anyone who wants some type of community feels pretty isolated doing their own thing. They might go to trainings and workshops, but they don't have that like, oh, it's your birthday or, oh, you're having a hard time. We're going to support you. They don't have fun social things. We really, really invest in that. We have a whole role called a client specialist. And not only is she working to care for our clients and give them a custom tailored high-end experience, she's also working on taking care of our clinicians. And that means all the things. So we're just invested in that and people feel it. And they feel it when they go through our interview process, which pretty much follows, it's kind of a hybrid between the top grading and who methodology. It's long and it takes a moment. We hire slowly. That's not typical in my profession, and people appreciate the intentionality. So we're crushing it. I mean, we probably had 5 or 6 A player candidates vying for this one position that we had open. That's not what's going on right now in this post-pandemic era where telehealth is here to stay. A lot of these bigger practices cannot find people to work for them.
So one is build community, right? Support services.
Also a commitment to learning. A lot of these people are just like, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to make a difference, and they can feel we have talent here and we have a lot of learning opportunities.
Can we talk a little bit about what the margins look like? I mean, I know like if say you're a lawyer, partner in a law firm, you're taking 2/3, sending a third back to the law firm. In a company like mine, it's a sliding scale of like junior people are probably giving up 60% of the economics and then it's sliding down toward highly expert people probably gets down into the 30s, 40s gross margin. So what's like typical in the industry if you're under the umbrella of a practice?
We aren't typical. And I think that's an important distinction, both internally and externally. So, typical for a practice is what I was telling you is that there's someone at the helm with almost no business background, and they're set up in this way that really isn't compliant with the IRS. It's just easier to do, which is a full 1099 model, but they're trying to create some kind of culture. So, it's more of a W 2 kind of arrangement with 10.
And what do you think they're taking it as a spread on that kind of person?
What they typically do with an eat what you kill model is about 60-40, the owner taking the 40%. But it slides, like you said, someone has a bigger caseload because in that model, there's less risk for the owner as well. They're not guaranteeing a paycheck. Hey, go to the Bahamas for a month. That's cool. You do you. You're not going to bring in anything. You're not going to get anything, but we're not holding your salary for you either. There's no benefits. So ours, again, is attractive to someone who wants to be part of a community. We're all W-2 salaried. We hire people full-time, three-quarter time, half-time, quarter time. We have a dynamic compensation model that totally goes off of our company scorecard as well as our full team KPI chart that's updated weekly. We have a lot of numbers. We have a lot of numbers that give us structure and stability. And then that structure creates freedom, which in the COVID era, we added on a fifth core value, which was about freedom and flexibility. And I would also say that's attractive to potential candidates. It's like you only have, if you're full time or if you're three-quarter or full time, we require you to come to 2 meetings that are 45 minutes each. And we tell them the dates and times. And other than that, you do you. You want to start working at 2 in the afternoon and work till 10. We don't care. It's a full freedom thing. If you can get your numbers and you want to work 3 other places, we don't care. You do it. It's full autonomy and people freaking love that with community and culture and learning.
But they are W-2s, even if they're doing stuff somewhere else.
They're W-2 salaried with full benefits.
And so obviously you're going to have to take a little more margin to cover all that, right?
Yes, and my margins are better in the long run because all you asked about was the typical split, like comparing it to like a contract position. So we have all these additional expenses, but we can set the security is worth something in the marketplace. The fact that they're going to get paid twice a month. And actually that candidate that we just got, I think that was a big part of the factor was that there was more upside in some of these other practices with a 1099 model, but she was going to take on the full risk if she was gone. She had to manage her money if she got sick, if she was on vacation, right? This is like, a lot of people that we're hiring have big grad school loans. Like, you're going to know you're getting a paycheck and you can go on vacation and still get paid. And so, hey, if you want to work for us half time, which means not all the other benefits, but like, and do something else where there's more of an upside till you feel secure in that, fine, great.
I kind of like the model because you have a lot of these industries where people want to be the 1099, right? But in this case, it sounds like it's an attractive to be a W-2. And as long as you can keep the demand funnel going, you've got great opportunity to create value there and build margin.
Yeah, that's right. And we use that money to invest back in the company. And I think the employees feel it because we do subsidized training. We do these fun events. We're having like our all hands retreat at the end of May, and it's going to be super fun. We are so all about you, kind of custom tailored for our clients, but also for our clinicians. Our clinical director is awesome, and she always does surveys to see what people want. I might have picked something totally different, but we did a lunchtime afternoon event for our annual holiday party, but not in December because no one wanted their calendar to be filled up. We asked them, what do you want? And this is what they wanted in majority. And she had someone come in who led like a sound healing session for everyone. And we played a few games and had some like presents and prizes, and everyone loved it.
I mean, it's very similar to a consulting firm. I mean, minus the sound healing. We have like professional development, training paths. So really what you've done is taken this sort of little bit of a fly-by-night, not real business kind of thing and turned it into a real professional services organization.
Yes. And so, again, I think I told you before we jumped on this thing, about 10 years ago, I was leading a kind of a business development type of workshop series for clinicians who might want to build a practice or go into practice on their own. And wow, like I didn't have this model at the time, but this would have really blown their minds. A lot of the people in the industry just, it takes time and energy to learn and to develop all these systems. And I would say most people, and myself included, when I started doing this and having more people under me, I was seeing a lot of clients. I was doing a lot of the training.
Which I'm sure is very typical.
Very typical. And frankly, I have the highest rates. I'm the expert. I'm the one. I was like a big part of the cash machine. And now I don't see any clients.
That's great. How long did that take?
Probably haven't been seeing clients for about 5 years.
Very good. But it took you what, X number of years to get to that?
It's hard to say because I was just doing my own thing when I started. Yeah, it was probably when I started Viva, it was probably about 10 years after that. And before that, I had been working in the field for, quite a long time.
So is one issue like, does like a therapy practice, can it transact? Can you sell it?
Yes.
Okay. And is there a market for these now? Like, are they transacting regularly or?
No, not regularly.
That strikes me as why people don't build it the right way is because they don't see that other side.
Well, they're not thinking about it. They didn't read Build to Sell or any of that stuff. They're not thinking that way. It's very organic. Like I would say a lot of my own, even getting into a bigger practice was super organic. Like I was an adjunct professor for 10 years. I saw talented people come through. I had supervisees that I was training. And then I was like, they wanted to see some clients. It was super like, oh, sure, I'll do this. And then I had a mentor and they said, oh, do it this way. It had just been like passed down through the legacy. Kind of, this is the way you do it. Very, very, very simple.
Yeah. And now you're running on DLER and gross margin and all that kind of stuff.
And I'm working on the business. So what I do is look at these systems and look at how we can improve them and bring a lot of the learning that I'm accruing to my operations team. I can promise you most of these big practices don't have an operations team. They don't have people. They don't have any of the stuff. They don't have a scorecard. They don't have KPIs. They're not looking at it like an entity in and of itself.
So another way to go, which you did some of at least, is to try to specialize, like become known for X kind of treatment or Y. You have a book. So talk a little bit about how you pursued that and what results that had.
So our niche at Viva, our USP, if you want to talk business talk, is that we offer non-talk based therapy. That is our niche. So what does that mean? It means that we're offering brain-based therapies. These are trainings that clinicians have to do after graduating. They're postgraduate specializations. Brain-based therapy like EMDR, brain spotting. We used to do neurofeedback before the pandemic. That you definitely have to be in person. Body-based therapies like somatic experiencing, sensory motor psychotherapy, expressive therapies. So it's not analytical. It's not like talk to my frontal lobe, to your frontal lobe. Because what that gets you is a better understanding of the theoretical underpinnings of why you might have symptoms. And what we're doing is we're actually getting into these deeper parts of your nervous system and changing the root of why you're having the symptoms so we get expedited results with our therapeutic approaches. So that is our niche in the marketplace, and people find us based on that. They usually are exposed to something from a book or a podcast. There are a couple of our heroes, which are Gabor Mate and Peter Levine and Bessel van der Kolk, and they're all kind of the giants of this movement. And someone reads their book, they Google some of the stuff in there because they'd never heard of it before, and we pop up. That is what we are known for.
And you wrote a book as well.
And so I wrote a book that's on implicit memory, which is endorsed by Gabor Mate. And have you heard his name or not?
I did for the research for this, but I'd never heard of him.
Oh, okay. So like he's been on Tim Ferriss's podcast. He's connected with the Kardashians. He's like he's an MD who's written a zillion books, all on trauma and addictions, like I mentioned. But he's a big supporter of work with implicit memory. It's not like the focus, but that's my focus. That's a whole other story. But I did write a book on this. I feel really passionate about this because most people walking around don't understand that there's a whole other map of knowledge in our body that you can change, not easily, but you can change it like in a few hours, not like 10 years of therapy or like even a year of therapy. Like you can make significant changes in a short amount of time. And that is the only kind of intervention that I do. I do these intensives, half day, full day, or 2 day long. I think of it like trauma surgery. You're kind of going in and reworking some of the takeaways from a trauma experience, meaning like I don't know, you're hit by a car and then so your body kind of freaks out when you're in a car or thinks or is like super protective of your kids or has a startle response or like maybe you react in a certain way and you can change those reactions by reworking this deeper network. Not enough people know about this. I mean, get to the tail end of suffering, like when someone's pain outweighs their hope that they can get through it. That's what suicide is about. People just said, this is over. And most people, I don't know the stat on this, but most people have no idea about the type of work that we do. And when they find out, they go to a retreat or they see a podcast or they're like pretty darn excited about it because it has a lot of implications for what you can do for yourself, for your loved ones, how you can kind of change. So that's my passion. And yes, what I'm pretty into now, because I'm a pretty classic entrepreneur, I have adult ADD and I get bored really easily. And then I'm like, ooh, another shiny object. I wrote a book and I do a lot of speaking and training on that topic. And I'm, passionate about helping people.
So how much of that is in person, like that kind of therapy? Yeah, or like your practice in general, like is a lot of it?
Right now, no, we did a pivot and it's one of the things that's, we launched a whole new business model in 2021 for lots of reasons, which we could also talk about. I don't know which messes you want to talk about, but I always find sharing messes makes people feel better about their entrepreneurial journey. It's like, oh, wow. Okay. And plus, isn't it nice to hear about a mess in hindsight after you're out of the fetal position and you're not like, rocking on the floor?
So it is remote, a lot of this?
Yeah, now it's going down the amount of remote service we're doing, but still at about 75%. We have offices in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. We're really this is the beauty of the flexible model. And the big thing about adding on this core value was it included me. A lot of times I put in these procedures that are like, you be free, you be flexible, but I didn't have the flexibility. Now I can be as generous as I want to be because it's all built on a premise of flexibility and freedom. So we ebb and flow with our office space, with our percentages based on what our clients are asking for and what our clinicians want. So I would say most clinicians have a day or two in person.
I mean, what I really like is obviously you followed, and you did this obviously out of passion, not saying it was just a business decision, but like you followed this, like, I'm not going to do the general thing, right? I'm going to niche down. Right. And so I have this passion around these type of therapies. And like now you can really build, not only does it help you bring the patients in, right? It also probably helps you keep the therapist because they're like, hey, I'm really into this. I want to work somewhere where they specialize in this and learn from them versus like some general therapist is like, hey, you're taking 70% of my fee off the top. And like, yeah, you send me to a training class, but I'm not really learning anything. And I'm just doing regular talk therapy. That doesn't seem like quite as compelling a model.
And I can't even tell you the things that I've seen. And so as a new clinician, you're coming in and you're like, oh my gosh, you're like, hear the stories. You don't know how it's going to work. You're like newly trained or you're still learning. Even seasoned clinicians go back to get some of this training, but the support is super important. I know someone who spent thousands of dollars on one of these advanced type of trainings and never did anything with it because they didn't have the support. They didn't have the supervision. They didn't have the case consultation client by client to feel like they knew what they were doing enough. And what a tragedy. I mean, what a tragedy. They get all the training, but they didn't have enough support to really blossom because this stuff is amazing. Like I've had clients with chronic medical conditions come in, and as long as they're inflammatory in nature, meaning something like
stress induced or something.
Stress induced, and there's a lot of them. I had a client who could barely go to work, had to take a leave of absence for 6 months, went back to work, but could not do anything after she got home. We did a few months of this work, like a few months, not a year, not 10 years, like a few months. And she could get off of work, go running, go gardening. Like she literally got her life back. And the medical doctor was like, what did you do? Right? But stress is a major player in our body. Inflammation is a major player. And yes, you can attack it nutritionally, you can attack it behaviorally, but we have some tools that help people rewire stuff that takes like the trauma load or the stress load out of your body.
So how do you approach growing this then? You're largely a DMV practice, right? District Maryland. So how do you approach growing something like this at this point?
I think at this moment, okay, I know this isn't as popular in the world of business where it's driven a lot by the dollar, but where we've been growing in the last few years is really around our reach with affordable services. We should have a nonprofit arm. We don't. We've just poured some of the profits into things like the Resilient Brain Project, which is a free online mental health repository. We do learning labs that use an equitable justice pricing model. So it ranges and down to free if you need it. We're really trying to spread the word so that more people know about this part of our bodies and how it exists. So a lot of our growth has to do with that, honestly, which I know doesn't affect the bottom line, but that's where we've been putting our engine and energy the last few years. We're trying to provide programs so that anyone can know about what I just told you about. Because here's the scenario I hate. People are like struggling with something at work or at school or whatever. And someone says, "Oh, you should go see a therapist." And they go see a traditional talk therapist and they yappa, yappa, yappa for a while. And then they still feel crappy. And then they're like, "Oh, let me conclude. Everyone tells me go to therapy. Well, I tried therapy. It didn't work. So I must be broken. So I'm just going to keep drinking or I'm just going to like give up because what is the point? There's such hopelessness and despair."
So wouldn't this then, like, I don't know how widespread these therapies are. I mean, is it like something you could go get in every major city, or is this like a pretty limited?
A lot of people don't know.
I guess I would think there's this opening to kind of become more the voice, help spread this, maybe franchise it, maybe training programs around it, like a whole nother business where it's just like promoting it. And there gonna be a charitable aspect to that, right? But like driving more, if you can get a business going where you're promoting an adoption through either any of those mechanisms, right? Then you're funding that process. You can fund more free therapy, right?
You mean adoption of these techniques? You know how you said equitable justice was like a trigger word for you? If you use the word adoption, because I'm an adoptee, and that's a big part of my story, I was like, "Wait, adoption of what? Wait, what?"
But what about becoming like building a media arm that's like gonna be the thing that promotes this technique, or building like a training program and or franchise kind of situation where you can help other people really implement this and get it more out there. Because it seems like you could be pretty good at getting the lead flow coming in through media side, but it's going to be hard to build out like a lot more people to do the work.
So there are, in terms of the training side, there are already people who have, so like EMDR, there's a whole international organization. It's a certain type of training and certification. Somatic experiencing, there's a whole institute and they do, these are specific techniques where there's trainers already in the place. But one of the things that I had thought about was, how one of the ways of pulling people together is to organize the disorganized. So there are actually quite a number of practitioners, not just mental health practitioners, that are tapping into the science of implicit memory. They just don't know it because they're using non-talk modalities in order to make changes in the nervous system. They're just not branding it that way. In the back of my book is a whole chart of different types of non-talk interventions that can affect the same type of change if you use it in a directed way. So I thought about that a little bit, which is creating some type of certification for non-talk therapeutic approaches or implicit memory certified practitioner. And you could be an acupuncturist and you could be a massage therapist and you could provide Reiki and you could be doing nature-informed therapy, but you also have this certification. So it means that you can look at one person and recognize, this is one of our other core values, is about just the difference of each individual nervous system. That your friend might have said, "Oh, go to Viva," and you don't know that your friend was doing EMDR because you don't even know what EMDR is. And so you're like, "My friend told me to come here." Then you start hearing all these things, and EMDR may or may not be the best thing for you. It may not feel comfortable for you, but there's other things. So I had thought about that because a part of it, Alan, is like, what do I actually feel like doing?
And that's probably, I was going to say that. It's like, of course, I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to grow it, and it might be fine what it is. You built a niche, thriving therapy practice in a very good geography, and like maybe you just want to run it.
I don't even have to run it.
Right, exactly. You've built it into a system that other people can run for you. You've moved toward the self-managing business like me, and now we can go boating all day.
We can go boating and we need to go boating. But Alan, one thing I think where my passion lies right now is helping people who are talented and driven and maybe have done a little bit or have invested in a journey of growth and evolution, helping them tap into some of the science that I know a lot about.
Is that sort of like positive psychology?
No, but I ascribe to positive psychology 100%.
But it's like you're not presenting some issue that is destroying your life. You're doing well, but these techniques can then help you do even. That's sort of like, to me, like a positive psychology.
Yes, so it would be for talented people who are interested in growing and improving and value having access to the latest kind of scientific developments around what you can do and create and perform with.
So give me some example. Like what would like I'm an amazing entrepreneur. I built a self-managing company. What and I come to you and I say, Julie, I want to be even better. What would you say?
Well, I'd first ask you because it's custom tailored to you. If I just answered, that would be what I want for you. I would say, "Hey, what do you want to be even better? Like what matters to you?" Then you'd be like, "I'm bored. I've built these businesses. I'm just whatever." I just made that up. Or you say, "Ugh, I want a better sex life." Or, "Ugh, I really am looking for, meaning in a different way and I'm struggling to find what that is."
And then what would you do? Say it was I'm bored and I need like new purpose because I already built my company.
I need new purpose. So then that's what we would start working on. I would give you a bunch of exercises so that you could be starting to do this yourself. Remember, my niche is implicit memory. So I actually believe if you're bored, your body's telling you something. You haven't actually tapped into your path or your most engaged next step, right? You would feel it if you were energized inside of it. So I would be looking to get deeper into your nervous system and I would give you some exercises to bypass this, your frontal lobe, which is where you'll make lists and try out da 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 da, and to get deeper into your purpose. So I would be guiding you that way. We'd be on a journey.
Interesting. Okay. So it sounds to me like you're going to become like the next entrepreneur coach, but not talk to them.
I will definitely talk to them, but I'll be looking to enlighten people on how getting away from the talk can actually move roadblocks. I used bored because a lot of us entrepreneurs get bored. Like we're creators and there's a challenge and then you get there and then you're like, what's next? It's not that exciting anymore. I already got there. I want another thing. And there are lots of choices. Another big problem is like, oh my gosh, there's so many choices. Which one is my choice? Which one, is going to feel the best for me at this moment in time?
Totally agree. And I think like entrepreneurship, the best thing about it is that you can kind of architect your own life because you pull the resources together. When you're successful, you can architect your own life, but you have to know what you want to architect, right? You can't just, if you spend the whole day, a lot of people just kind of do the same thing over again. They kind of, or they ruminate on not having done, not doing it anymore, but they still think about that stuff all the time. Or they sell their company and they go build another one. Always seems a little odd to me. And I guess that's because I haven't tapped into their implicit memory.
Exactly. We all have a canvas of our life, right? We all have choices. And especially someone like that, like us, where you get somewhere and then you have all this freedom, which you fought for. And it's like, what do you want to do with that? And if you just go ahead and do, which is actually the fourth step in my transformation methodology, if you skip the first three, it's going to be unconscious. It's not going to be intentional. You're going to miss the data that's in your body that's going to guide you on your best path. Yours. I don't know so that's why we were like, what should I do next? If I told you what you should do next, that would be me telling you what I want for you, which is not what you should do next. So I'm still playing around with some of this wording, but I've been playing around with an inner sage because the only path that matters for you is your path. And the challenge is finding it. If I tell you, it's a disservice.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of the Jungian view where you become who you are over time. That's your job as a human, is to become who you are and discover that. Yeah. I've kind of subscribed to that myself.
But I'd be happy if you were offering to brainstorm that with me. I would love that because you're brilliant.
Yeah, I'm in. I'll be the first patient or whatever you call customer, whatever you want to call me. When do you think you're going to release this?
Oh, I'm developing it right now, actually.
Are we talking in the next year? Or?
Oh, yeah, for sure. If not, to be honest, my forum, I know it's forum confidential, but it was my deep dive. So, we just workshop this because I am a symptom of my own struggle, which is that I have this specific specialty and lots of areas where I'd like to release it. So I think what I got out of my deep dive with my forum was just to do it in a bunch of ways and kind of see which one, touches my own heartstrings. So yeah, so it's imminent.
All right. Well, so I think today was really interesting. We kind of learned how to build a good therapy practice. That would actually be the other thing I think you should do is teach other people how to. I think you need an online course for how to build a therapy business in a correct manner.
I think maybe the world might need it, but I don't know if I want to.
You don't want to provide it, right? I get it.
People all the time are like, "Oh, you should do this. Oh, it would be so great if you did that." And I remember because I did this women's retreat for 15 years, and people would always be like, "Oh my gosh, you need to do them every week of the year." They were always sold out. It was like, you need to do at least one a quarter. I was like, I don't want to do that. I got 4 kids. I'm like, and so part of it is also like discerning. That's hard, right? To discern which place to go in.
Well, Julie, thank you for being on today. And if people want to reach out to you, they go Viva Partnership.
Or I would say Julie at drjulielopez.com.
Especially, I think we're going to have some people on here who might be into this. What's the branding on the new service? What do you have you branded it? Yeah.
Not really, but I will just call it the Inner Sage program for now.
Excellent. All right, Julie. Well, thanks for being on today, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me, Alan. Bye.
You've been listening to the Small Business Mentor podcast, brought to you by Alan Pence. For more insights on how to navigate your business through its black holes, visit @apence on X. Don't forget to search for Small Business Mentor in your podcast app to subscribe. Thank you for joining us, and here's to your next leap in business growth.